It was a bright Saturday morning, and the small restaurant by the corner of the city was already buzzing with activity. The smell of fresh bread and sizzling breakfast filled the air, mixing with the soft sound of music playing from an old radio in the corner. The restaurant wasn't fancy, but it had warmth. The walls were painted a soft yellow, and the windows let in the sunlight that danced across the wooden floor. People who came here were regulars, families, and people who liked the comfort of home-cooked meals. Among the staff was a young waitress, who was known for her warm smile. She moved quickly but never hurriedly, making sure every customer felt seen. Her hair was tied back neatly, and her apron carried faint stains from the morning rush. She didn't care about appearances. What mattered to her was making people feel welcome. She had a natural way of making children laugh, of noticing when someone looked lonely or sad. That morning, like many as the morning moved into afternoon, the restaurant continued its lively rhythm. The smells of freshly baked bread and cooked meals blended with the soft music that filled the air. The boy, still sitting at his corner table, settled into a happy, calm state, his earlier excitement mellowing into a quiet smile. He fidgeted slightly with his hands, tracing the patterns on the table, but his mind seemed full of joy. The waitress moved from table to table, smiling and taking orders, yet her eyes occasionally flicked toward the boy. She wanted to make sure he remained comfortable and happy. It wasn't out of duty or obligation. It was out of instinct and a kind heart. She had always felt that a small gesture of attention or kindness could change someone's day in ways nothing else could. And for this boy, it was clear that her presence had already made a difference. Meanwhile, the boy's father remained seated quietly, observing everything. He had never expected to be so moved by such a simple scene. His son's laughter, the warmth in the waitress's gestures, and the genuine joy that radiated between them had struck a chord in his heart. He had wealth, status, and influence. Yet he realized that none of those things could provide the kind of happiness he was witnessing. What mattered was sincerity, care, and human connection, qualities that were often overlooked but incredibly powerful. The afternoon wore on, and the restaurant gradually calmed from the busy morning rush. The smells of food still lingered in the air, and the soft hum of conversation created a comforting backdrop. The boy sat at his corner table, a peaceful smile resting on his face, and his mother chatted quietly with him, clearly relieved to see him so happy. The small adventures and dances he had shared with the waitress earlier had filled him with energy and joy, but now a calm contentment settled over him. The waitress continued her work, refilling drinks, taking orders, and checking on each table with her warm smile. She moved with the ease of someone used to balancing tasks, yet her eyes always sought out those who might need a little extra attention. Every so often, she glanced toward the boy, noticing how he now engaged with his surroundings, his confidence growing with each passing minute. The boy's father remained seated, observing quietly. He had watched the interaction from the very beginning, and each time he saw his son laugh, his heart felt fuller. Wealth and power had surrounded him all his life, but he had never seen anything so simple and so impactful. A stranger's kindness had brought genuine happiness to his child, and he couldn't stop thinking the restaurant had begun to quiet down as the afternoon turned into early evening. The bright sunlight from the windows softened, casting a warm golden glow across the wooden floors. The boy sat in his wheelchair, still smiling from the activities and stories he had shared with the waitress throughout the day. His mother watched him with a mixture of relief and gratitude, and the father sat nearby, reflecting silently on the extraordinary moments he had witnessed. The waitress continued her work, clearing tables, refilling drinks, and chatting with the remaining customers. She moved with the calm assurance of someone comfortable in her role, yet her heart remained attentive to the boy. She had spent the day playing, dancing, and imagining alongside him, but she never expected anything in return. For her, the joy on his face was reward enough. She had learned that happiness often came from simple acts of attention and care. The father finally stood, his emotions overwhelming him. He walked over to the waitress, pausing for a moment to find the right words. "Excuse me," he began, his voice steady but filled with feeling. "I need to introduce myself properly. I don't think you realize how much today has meant to us." The waitress turned, surprised but smiling. "Oh, it was nothing," she said humbly. "I just wanted him to have a fun day." He shook his head. No, it was more than nothing. My son hasn't been this happy in a long time. Your kindness, your attention, and the way you treated him with respect and care is rare. You've given him a gift that goes far beyond what anyone could imagine. The waitress felt warmth spread through her chest. She had never expected recognition, and yet hearing his words made her realize that her small acts had made a meaningful difference. I'm glad he had fun, she said simply. That's all that matters. The father smiled gently. It matters more than you know. I've watched him laugh, imagine, and express himself in ways he rarely does. And it's all because of you. I can't thank you enough. The boy, hearing the conversation, looked between them with wide eyes. He had seen many adults react to him in different ways, but this felt different. There was no pity, no pressure, just genuine gratitude and acknowledgement. He felt proud and important in a way that was new and exhilarating. The waitress knelt beside him, brushing her hand lightly on his arm. Remember what I told you? She said softly. You are amazing just as you are. Never forget that. The boy nodded, a radiant smile spreading across his face. I won't, he whispered. The father took a deep breath, feeling both humility and admiration. He had spent much of his life surrounded by wealth and status, but he realized that no amount of money or influence could create the happiness he had witnessed today. A simple act of human kindness, one person noticing another, treating them with care, had transformed his son's day. Perhaps even his perspective on life. He knelt slightly to meet his son's eye level. You know, he said softly, sometimes we forget that what matters most is the love and attention we give each other. Today, someone showed us that in a way that words can't describe. The boy smiled, his eyes glistening. I'm really happy, he said quietly. I've never had so much fun. The waitress stood, brushing her apron. I'm glad. That's the best part of my days, seeing someone happy, laughing, and having fun. The father nodded thoughtfully. You've reminded me that true happiness comes from connection, care, and kindness. And you've shown my son that he is valued and capable of joy, no matter what. The boy's mother reached over and held her son's hand gently. Today has been wonderful, she said softly. Thank you for making it so special. The waitress smiled humbly. It's nothing. Seeing him happy is reward enough for me. The father looked at her, a quiet admiration in his eyes. You have a rare gift, he said. Your kindness, your patience, your attention, it's something extraordinary. I hope you know how much you've touched our lives today. The waitress felt a warmth in her chest, quiet satisfaction in knowing that her simple gestures had created such a meaningful impact. She had not expected gratitude, recognition, or reward. She had only wanted to share joy, laughter, human connection, and she had succeeded. The boy turned to his father and whispered, Can she come play with me again tomorrow? The father chuckled softly, a mixture of pride and amusement on his face. We'll see, my boy, he said, ruffling his hair gently. But today, we have a memory that we'll always treasure. The waitress knelt one last time beside the boy, her hands resting lightly on the wheelchair. Remember, happiness isn't about what others give you or what you don't have. It's about finding joy in the moment, in the little things, and in sharing it with others. She said softly. The boy nodded, absorbing her words. I'll remember, he whispered, as the restaurant's evening crowd began to grow. The waitress continued her work, ensuring everyone felt welcome and cared for. She moved with a quiet confidence, her heart full from the experiences of the day. The boy remained at his table, smiling, laughing, and sharing small stories with his parents. His confidence and joy renewed. The father stayed nearby, watching the waitress interact with the other customers. He felt a deep respect and admiration for her, understanding that her impact extended far beyond what he could see. She had shown his son that he was valued, capable, and deserving of joy. And she had reminded him, the father, the true power of human connection. As the evening settled in, the family prepared to leave. The boy waved at the waitress, his eyes shining. Thank you for everything, he said, his voice full of sincerity. The waitress waved back, smiling. You're welcome. Never forget how amazing you are. The father approached her one last time. "I hope you know that today you didn't just make a difference, you changed lives. And for that, I will always be grateful," he said sincerely. The waitress smiled, feeling the depth of his gratitude, but remaining humble. "I just did what felt right. That's all," she replied softly, as they walked out of the restaurant. The boy's laughter echoed, a sound full of joy, confidence, and freedom. The father felt a sense of awe and gratitude, knowing that this day would remain in their hearts forever. He had learned something profound, that wealth and power could not create happiness. But kindness, attention, and human connection could. The mother held her son close, smiling at the warmth that had filled the day. "Today was special," she whispered. "Yes," the boy replied, his eyes sparkling. "The best day ever." The waitress watched them leave, a quiet smile on her face. She returned to her duties, her heart full, knowing that she had given something valuable and intangible, a sense of joy, inclusion, and love. And in doing so, she had been reminded of the true essence of life, that small acts of kindness could ripple through the world in ways that touched hearts, built confidence, and created memories that lasted forever. As the lights in the restaurant dimmed slightly with the approaching evening, the warmth lingered. It was in the boy's laughter, the mother's grateful gaze, and the father's quiet reflection. And it was in the waitress, whose heart remained open, reminding everyone who crossed her path that even small gestures could create extraordinary moments, leaving an impact far greater than anyone could imagine. That day, in that small corner of the city, a simple act of care, a dance, a story, and an imagination had brought happiness, hope, and connection. It was a moment none of them would ever forget, a reminder that kindness is the greatest gift one can give. About it, he realized that the richest moments in life weren't found in possessions or titles, but in connections that came straight from the heart. As the waitress approached the boy's table again, she leaned in gently. "Would you like to do one more activity before the day ends?" she asked. Her voice was soft and inviting. The boy's eyes brightened instantly. "Yes, what is it?" She smiled and whispered, "We're going to tell a story together. I'll start, and then you can add to it. We'll create our own world, full of surprises and fun." The boy's imagination sparked. He nodded eagerly, his eyes shining with excitement. "Okay, let's make it a magical forest." She guided him gently to a small open space near the center of the restaurant, ensuring his wheelchair had room to move safely. "Perfect," she said. "We're entering the magical forest. Look at the tall, sparkling trees. Can you see the creatures hiding behind them?" The boy raised his hands as if peering into the invisible forest. "Yes, there's a tiny dragon hiding behind a tree." The waitress gasped dramatically. "Oh no, we have to be very careful. The dragon looks friendly, but it's shy. Maybe we can show it a trick to make it smile." The boy laughed and made gestures, pretending to tiptoe carefully through the forest. Each time he added a new element, she followed along, creating a playful, imaginative dialogue. "Oh, look. A rainbow appears in the sky. We can slide down it to reach the sparkling river," she said. The father watched closely, moved by the way his son's confidence had blossomed. Normally, he was hesitant to try new things, careful to avoid failure or embarrassment. But here, guided by someone who cared only about his happiness, he had flourished. The mother smiled at the sight, realizing that her son's laughter and imagination had been unlocked by a kind stranger, who had treated him as capable and special. The story continued to grow, each edition more creative than the last. The boy introduced talking animals, magical stones, and hidden treasures. The waitress responded with delight, encouraging him and adding playful twists that kept the adventure alive. She made every movement expressive, acting out the gestures of the characters in their story, making the boy laugh until his sides ached. At one point, the boy's hands shot up in excitement. "Look, the treasure chest is guarded by a giant turtle, but he wants to dance too." The waitress clapped and swayed, pretending to dance with the invisible turtle. "Of course. We can't leave him out. Let's show him our moves." The boy mirrored her, moving his hands in circles, spinning his wheelchair slowly, and laughing loudly. Other patrons glanced over, some smiling and whispering to each other about the joyous scene. The waitress paid them no mind. Her full attention was on the boy, making sure he felt included and celebrated. The father felt a lump in his throat as he observed. He had expected a pleasant lunch outing, perhaps a few smiles, but this was beyond anything he could have imagined. His son's happiness radiated through the room, a pure, unfiltered joy. And the woman who had made it possible had done so without thought of reward, recognition, or status. Her generosity was instinctive, genuine, and it had transformed an ordinary day into something extraordinary. The story reached its climax with the discovery of a magical waterfall hidden deep in the forest. The boy pretended to leap from rock to rock, laughing at the idea of sliding down the sparkling water. The waitress mimicked the motion, exaggerating her steps and adding playful sounds that made the boy giggle uncontrollably. It was a moment of pure imagination, freedom, and shared joy. After the story ended, the waitress knelt beside the boy, brushing her hands lightly, as if dusting off imaginary leaves. "That was amazing," she said softly. "You're a fantastic storyteller. I loved every part of it." The boy's eyes glimmered with pride. "Thank you for helping me," he said quietly. "I didn't think I could make such a fun story." "You did it all by yourself," she said warmly. "I just helped a little. You have all the imagination and creativity you need inside you." The father, moved by the exchange, finally rose from his seat. He walked toward the waitress cautiously, unsure of how to approach someone who had given so much to his son without any expectation. "Excuse me," he said, his voice steady but filled with emotion. "I need to introduce myself. I don't think you realize how much what you did today has meant to us." The waitress turned, slightly surprised. "Oh, it was nothing," she replied softly, a humble smile on her face. "I just wanted to make his day better. That's all." He shook his head gently, his eyes sincere. "No, it was much more than that. My son hasn't been this happy in a long time. Your kindness, your attention, your willingness to see him for who he is, it's remarkable. I want you to know how grateful I am." The waitress felt a warmth spread through her chest. She had never expected recognition, but hearing the father's words made her heart swell. "Thank you," she said simply. "I just wanted him to feel happy and included." The father nodded, smiling. "You've done that and more. You've reminded me that the smallest acts of kindness can have the biggest impact. And you've shown my son that he is valued and special, no matter what." The boy watched the exchange, his eyes wide with curiosity. He had seen adults react to him in many ways, but this moment felt different. There was no pretense. No judgment, just genuine gratitude and sincerity. The waitress knelt again beside the boy, giving him a gentle pat on the shoulder. "Remember what we talked about?" she said softly. "You're amazing just the way you are. Don't let anyone make you feel otherwise." The boy nodded, his smile radiant. "I will," he whispered. The father took a deep breath, feeling a deep sense of gratitude and humility. He had witnessed something extraordinary that day, a simple act of human kindness that had transformed the way he saw his son and the world. He realized that generosity, warmth, and attention were priceless gifts. Far beyond anything money could buy, the waitress returned to her tasks, still keeping a watchful eye on the boy, ensuring he remained happy and comfortable. The boy continued to smile, his confidence growing with every passing minute. He had been given a gift, not of material value, but of connection, attention, and acceptance. And in that moment, surrounded by the sounds of laughter and conversation, the warmth of the restaurant, and the sunlight streaming through the windows, a sense of peace and contentment settled over everyone. The father lingered for a few moments longer, watching the waitress interact with other customers, observing the genuine care she gave to each person. He felt a profound respect for her, understanding that her actions had created a lasting impact that no wealth or privilege could match. He realized that life's most meaningful moments often came from ordinary people willing to offer kindness without expectation. As the afternoon light softened, the boy's mother whispered softly to her son, "Today has been wonderful, hasn't it?" He nodded eagerly. "Yes, I had so much fun. She made it all so magical." The waitress smiled from across the room, feeling a quiet satisfaction. She had only wanted to make a difference, and in doing so, she had brought joy, confidence, and laughter to a child who needed it most. She had reminded the adults around her of something equally important: the power of kindness and the beauty of seeing the world through another person's eyes. And as the father watched, a quiet thought settled in his mind, a realization that life's true treasures were not found in possessions, but in moments like these, where genuine care and compassion touched hearts in ways that money never could. He knew that he would never forget this day, the laughter, the play, and the remarkable kindness of a woman who had unknowingly changed their lives forever. As the waitress finished serving a family near the entrance, she noticed the boy glancing toward the window. The sunlight was streaming in, creating a soft glow around him. She walked over gently. "Hey," she said softly, kneeling down to his level. "Are you enjoying your day so far?" The boy nodded, a small smile on his lips. "Yes, it's been really fun. I don't usually get to do things like this." She smiled warmly. "I'm glad. You know, everyone deserves moments like this. Moments where they can just be themselves and have fun, and you deserve them too." He looked at her thoughtfully, as if trying to absorb every word. "Thank you for making me feel normal," he said quietly. She reached out and gently touched his hand. "You are normal. You're special in your own way, and nothing should ever make you feel any less." The father watched silently, his chest tight with emotion. He had spent so much of his life focusing on success, on control, and on appearances. Yet here he was witnessing a truth that was far more important. His son didn't need toys, gadgets, or attention drawn by wealth. He needed someone who could see him, who could connect with him, and who could bring a genuine smile to his face. And that is exactly what the waitress had done. Feeling inspired by the earlier dancing, the waitress had an idea. She leaned closer and whispered, "Would you like to try something new?" The boy's eyes brightened. "What is it?" "Let's do a little pretend adventure," she said with a grin. "We can use our imagination. You can be a superhero, and I'll be your sidekick. Or maybe we're explorers discovering hidden treasures. It's up to you," he giggled, clearly excited by the idea. "Okay, let's be explorers." She helped him position his wheelchair safely in the middle of a small open space, making sure he had room to move. She started narrating a story as she gently moved her arms and body, acting out the scenes. "We are entering a secret cave," she said, "and we must be very careful. Look out for the sparkling stones on the floor. Step carefully." The boy followed along, his hands moving in the air as if he were picking up invisible treasures. He laughed each time the waitress added a funny twist to the story. It's like pretending a stone was ticklish, or that a tiny invisible creature was following them. Other customers glanced over, smiling at the imaginative play, but the waitress didn't mind. Her full attention was on him. On ensuring he felt included and had fun, the boy began to improvise, adding his own elements to the story. "There's a hidden waterfall," he shouted, his voice full of excitement. "We have to slide down." The waitress acted as if she was sliding along, making exaggerated gestures and silly noises that made him burst into laughter. "Oh no, the water is so slippery," she exclaimed. "Hold on to your hat, explorer." The father's heart swelled as he watched. His son, usually quiet and reserved, was animated, expressive, and full of life. He realized that this simple, unplanned moment of creativity and play had opened a door that no amount of wealth or attention had ever done. The waitress hadn't just brought him joy. She had given him freedom, confidence, and the courage to express himself. The boy's mother watched, tears threatening to spill from her eyes. She whispered softly to herself, grateful for the woman who had brought such light into her son's day. It was clear that this encounter had touched everyone involved, creating a memory that would linger long after they left the restaurant. As the adventure continued, the waitress guided the boy through a series of imaginative challenges. She made him climb invisible ladders, jump over pretend rivers, and navigate through secret passages. Each movement was accompanied by her words of encouragement. "You're doing so well. Keep going, explorer," she said, her voice full of warmth and enthusiasm. The boy responded with laughter and determination. Fully immersed in the imaginative world they were creating together, the father remained seated, quietly observing. He reflected on his own life and the many people he had encountered. He realized that kindness, authenticity, and genuine attention were rare qualities. This waitress, a stranger, had given all of that to his son without expecting anything in return. He felt a deep sense of gratitude and admiration, understanding that her impact went far beyond what he could see in that single moment. As the afternoon light shifted, the waitress noticed the boy starting to tire. She gently guided him back to his table, making sure he was comfortable. "You did an amazing job today," she said softly. "I hope you remember how brave and creative you are." The boy's eyes sparkled. "I will," he said, a sincere smile on his face. "Thank you for everything. This was the best day ever." "You're very welcome," she replied, brushing her apron lightly. "Remember, it's not about what others think or what you can't do. It's about finding joy in the moment and being yourself." The father stood quietly, feeling a deep sense of emotion. He knew that this waitress had touched his son's heart in a way that few people ever could. He had been searching for genuine connections in his life, and he realized that they often came from the most unexpected places. The woman before him had no idea of her impact. She had given his son a priceless gift. The boy's mother reached over and held his hand gently. "Today was special," she said softly. "Thank you for making it so wonderful." The waitress smiled humbly. "It's nothing. Seeing him happy is the reward. That's all I need." The father watched this interaction, feeling a mixture of admiration and respect. He knew that he would never forget this day, the laughter, the play, and the genuine human connection that had unfolded in a small, ordinary restaurant. He realized that these moments were the true treasures of life, far more valuable than any material possession. As the restaurant continued to hum with activity, the waitress returned to her tasks, still keeping an eye on the boy. She served other customers, refilled drinks, and ensured everyone felt comfortable. Yet her heart remained with the boy. Knowing that the small moments of attention and care had created something meaningful, the boy looked around the restaurant, his eyes filled with a newfound confidence. He felt seen, valued, and happy in a way that he hadn't experienced before. The simple act of being noticed, encouraged, and included had opened a door to joy and self-expression. He knew that he would carry this feeling with him. Remembering the kindness of the woman who had danced, played, and imagined alongside him, the father remained seated, quietly reflecting on the lessons of the day. He realized that wealth and power could provide many things, but true happiness and human connection came from the heart. The waitress had demonstrated that kindness, authenticity, and attention could create moments that changed lives. And in that quiet observation, he understood the value of gratitude, humility, and the simple, profound impact of genuine care. The afternoon sun cast a warm glow over the restaurant, highlighting the smiles, laughter, and joy that filled the room. For the boy, the waitress, and the father, this day would remain etched in their memories as a moment of pure connection, laughter, and love. And even as life continued outside the walls of the restaurant, the magic of this simple human act would linger, reminding them of the power of kindness and the beauty of shared moments. Others, she walked from table to table, taking orders and chatting briefly with each customer. At one corner of the restaurant, a boy sat in a wheelchair next to a small table. He was around 8 years old, with a mop of dark hair and eyes that seemed too large for his face. He wasn't playing with the small toy cars he had brought. Instead, he stared out the window, watching the people walk by. There was a quiet sadness in him, a sense of being left out, as if the world outside the glass was moving faster than he could ever reach. His mother was seated across from him, speaking softly, while his father remained distant, absorbed in his own thoughts and occasionally checking his phone. The boy had always found it hard to connect with other children, not because he didn't want to, but because his legs didn't let him keep up. He wanted to join in games, run around, feel the wind on his face, but those moments were rare. And so, when the restaurant was full of laughter and conversation, he remained on the sidelines, silent and small. The waitress noticed him almost immediately. It was something she had learned over the years. She could see when a child needed a friend. She approached his table with her usual gentle smile. "Hi there," she said, leaning slightly so her eyes were at his level. "How's your morning going?" The morning continued, and the restaurant gradually filled with more people. The soft chatter of families, the clinking of plates, and the occasional laughter of children created a lively atmosphere. The boy remained at his table, still grinning from the dancing session he had shared with the waitress. His small hands fidgeted with a napkin as he tried to calm down from the excitement. His mother watched him quietly, a gentle smile on her face, happy to see her son so alive and joyful. The waitress moved around the restaurant, taking orders, refilling drinks, and ensuring everyone was comfortable. Yet every few minutes, she glanced back at the boy. She wanted to make sure he was still enjoying himself. It wasn't a task or an obligation. It was simply who she was. She had learned over time that small acts of attention could make a huge difference in someone's day. Seeing that he seemed restless, she decided to check on him again. "Hey, you've got a little sparkle in your eyes now," she said as she approached his table. "Want to play a little game with me?" The boy looked up curiously. "What kind of game?" he asked. She leaned in slightly, lowering her voice to a playful whisper. "A music game. I'll play some songs and we'll dance together, but you can only use your hands and your arms. We'll make it fun and silly. Are you up for it?" His eyes lit up, and without hesitation, he nodded. Yes. She led him to a slightly open space near the corner where there was room for him to move his wheelchair safely. She started humming a lively tune, tapping her feet and waving her hands in rhythm. The boy mirrored her movements as best as he could. At first, his gestures were small, hesitant, but with every passing beat, he grew bolder. He raised his hands, twisted his torso, and even made little spinning motions with the wheelchair. The waitress clapped and laughed, making exaggerated movements that made him giggle uncontrollably. "See? You're dancing like a pro," she cheered. "Look at those moves. I've never seen anyone dance like that before." The boy's laughter was contagious, and soon a few other customers glanced over, smiling at the joyful scene. Some parents even encouraged their own children to join in, creating a small ripple of excitement around the restaurant. But the waitress kept her attention on the boy, making sure that he felt included above everyone else. She told jokes, made funny faces, and let him copy her silly gestures. The room felt lighter, filled with laughter and music, and for a moment, the worries of the outside world seemed to disappear. The father continued to watch silently from his table, studying the scene. He had seen his son happy before, but never like this. It wasn't a gift or a toy that brought this smile. It was simple attention, genuine care, and human connection. He felt a strange mix of admiration and humility. The waitress didn't know him, didn't recognize his wealth or influence, and yet she treated his son with the same warmth and respect she would give to anyone else. He realized that this was rare. In his life, he had met many people who were polite, charming, or even flattering, but very few who were authentic in their kindness. The boy began to experiment with the movements, adding small flourishes of his own. He waved his arms faster, tried spinning in a bigger circle, and laughed each time the waitress made a dramatic expression. Pretending to stumble or tip over in a silly way, she guided him gently, making sure he was safe and confident. He started to forget any limitations he had felt about his body. In that space, he felt free, capable, and joyful. At one point, she handed him a small napkin and showed him how to twirl it above his head, while keeping rhythm with the song. "Look at that. You're like a magician with your napkin," she said, her voice full of encouragement. The boy's eyes sparkled as he tried to follow her movements. Each successful twirl was met with her exaggerated cheers and applause. He beamed, feeling a sense of accomplishment that he had rarely felt. The waitress noticed the boy's father shifting slightly in his seat, his gaze never leaving the scene. She had no idea who he was, only that he seemed deeply absorbed. She smiled warmly, continuing her playful performance. "Sometimes the best dances are the ones that make you laugh the most," she said, glancing at the boy. "It's not about perfect steps. It's about having fun." The boy's mother whispered softly from across the table, "Thank you." I don't think I've ever seen him this happy." The waitress simply smiled, giving a little nod. "It's nothing special," she said humbly. "I just like to see kids smile. That's enough for me." Meanwhile, the father reflected on the simplicity of the moment. He realized that his son had been longing for attention. For someone who treated him as a person rather than focusing on his disability. And here, in this unassuming restaurant, a stranger had given that to him without expecting anything in return. The father's chest tightened with emotion. It was humbling and moving all at once. He had the power to change lives in grand ways. Sometimes the smallest gestures left the deepest impact. The music changed, switching to a slower, more melodic tune. The waitress slowed her movements and encouraged the boy to follow. "Now, we'll do a slow dance," she said softly. "You can move gently and sway. Just feel the music in your hands." The boy concentrated, mimicking her motions carefully. They moved in a synchronized rhythm, turning slowly, his hands gliding in the air as if painting invisible pictures. The laughter had quieted into a soft smile, a peaceful happiness that settled over his face. The waitress whispered words of encouragement, guiding him gently. Each time he made a motion correctly, she praised him. "Beautiful. You're amazing." The father's eyes glistened as he watched. He felt a deep appreciation for this woman's heart, for the way she connected with his son. He realized that her kindness was rare and invaluable. She didn't treat the boy as fragile or weak. She treated him as someone capable of joy, laughter, and life. That perspective was more precious than any luxury he could provide. As the slow song ended, the waitress knelt beside the boy, resting her hands on his wheelchair. "You see, you can dance beautifully and you made it your own," she said softly. "I hope you remember this feeling, how it feels to have fun, to be free, and to just enjoy the moment." The boy's eyes glimmered with gratitude. "I will," he said. "Thank you for dancing with me. I never thought I could have this much fun." "You're very welcome," she replied, standing up and brushing her apron lightly. "And remember, it's not about what others think. It's about what makes you happy. Keep smiling and never forget how amazing you are." The father's heart swelled with emotion. He finally approached the waitress, standing at a distance, unsure how to introduce himself without interrupting the beautiful interaction. He had been moved by her sincerity, her warmth, and her ability to see his son, not as someone in need of pity, but as a person full of potential and joy. In that quiet moment, he realized how much he had learned just by watching. As he watched the boy settle back into his seat, the mother thanked the waitress again. "You've made such a difference for him today. I can't thank you enough." The waitress shook her head with a gentle smile. "It's my pleasure. Just seeing him happy is enough. That's all that matters." The father lingered for a moment longer, observing the way she moved around the restaurant, the way she interacted with other customers, and the care she gave to each person. He saw authenticity, warmth, and a rare kind of generosity. And he knew, without a doubt, that this was someone who had touched his son's life in a meaningful way. The morning continued with its usual rhythm, but for the boy, the waitress, and the father, a small magical world had opened up. Laughter, music, and genuine human connection had created a moment that would linger in their hearts. And even though it was just a few minutes in the grand scheme of the day, it was a moment of pure joy, trust, and care, one that none of them would ever forget. The boy looked up slowly. "It's okay," he said, his voice soft, almost hesitant. She could tell he wasn't used to people asking about his feelings. Most adults either ignored him or treated him as if he was fragile and needed pity. She didn't. She just saw him. "That's good," she said. "Do you like music?" The boy blinked, surprised by the question. "I like it," he admitted, his lips curling slightly. "I like to dance, but I can't really move my legs much." Her eyes lit up. "That's okay. You don't need to move your legs to dance. We can dance with our hands, our arms, our smiles. Come on, let's try." She took a small step back and started moving to the rhythm of the song playing on the radio. Duh. Swaying her shoulders, lifting her arms, and spinning gently. She made it look fun, easy, and without any pressure. The boy watched her for a moment, unsure, then slowly, he began to mimic her with his arms. She laughed softly, clapping her hands in encouragement. Yes, that's it. You're doing amazing. The boy's face changed slowly, as if the sunlight had found its way into his chest. He giggled, a sound that was bright and clear, and tried to sway a little more. She joined him, moving her arms in a circle, making sure he could see every movement clearly. Other customers glanced over, smiling at the scene, but the waitress paid no attention to them. Her focus was entirely on the boy, on making him feel included and happy. Meanwhile, in the back corner of the restaurant, a man sat quietly. He was dressed in casual clothes, unremarkable to anyone passing by. But his eyes never left the boy. He observed every movement, every smile, every laugh, and his heart felt something he hadn't felt in a long time. He had wealth, influence, and power. Yet here in this simple restaurant, and watching this simple act of kindness, he felt something real. He saw his son laugh in a way he had not seen in years. A laugh unburdened by the weight of life or illness. He watched the waitress not as a wealthy businessman, but as a person who genuinely cared for another human being. The boy started to move more confidently, following her lead with both his hands. He spun his wheelchair slowly, laughing loudly now, forgetting for a moment that the world sometimes limited him. The waitress clapped and cheered. You're incredible. Look at you go, she said, her voice full of warmth. The boy's mother watched, smiling softly, tears glistening in her eyes. She had seen her son laugh before, but not like this. There was something pure and joyful in this moment. The waitress continued to dance with him, making small, playful movements, turning every gesture into a celebration. She used her voice too, humming along with the music, making silly faces that made the boy giggle uncontrollably. For the first time in a long while, the boy felt normal. For the first time in a long while, he felt free. The restaurant seemed to fade away around them, and it was just the two of them, sharing a connection that needed no words. From his seat, the father felt a lump in his throat. He had seen people who were kind before, but this was different. This kindness wasn't about being polite or earning praise. It was spontaneous, genuine, and it lit up his son's world in ways money never could. He realized how much he had underestimated the power of human connection. All the gifts, the trips, the fancy toys, they didn't compare to this simple act of dancing with his son. He wanted to stand up to say something, to show his gratitude, but he stayed seated, not wanting to interrupt the pure moment unfolding in front of him. As the song ended, the waitress knelt down beside the boy, brushing imaginary dust from his hands, making him laugh again. See, that wasn't so hard, was it? She asked, her voice gentle and encouraging. The boy shook his head, his smile wide. That was amazing. I never thought I could dance like that. You can do anything you set your mind to, she said warmly. It's all about having fun and believing in yourself. You don't need anyone to tell you what you can or can't do. He looked at her, eyes sparkling. Thank you, he said simply. No grand gestures, no overused phrases. Just a boy expressing gratitude in the purest form. She smiled back, standing up slowly, brushing her apron. You're welcome. Remember, keep smiling and never let anyone make you feel small. The father sat there, watching this interaction, feeling a mix of awe and deep emotion. He had seen so many people in his life, but few had moved him like this. He understood in that moment that his son had found a friend, someone who didn't see disability first but humanity. He felt a strange mix of pride and humility, realizing that sometimes the richest experiences in life didn't come from money or influence, but from the hearts of ordinary people willing to care. The restaurant continued its morning rhythm. But for the boy, the waitress, and the father, something extraordinary had happened in that corner. A simple act, a small dance, shared moment of joy had created a memory that would linger far longer than any meal, any gift, or any luxury. It was a reminder that kindness had power beyond measure, and that even in the most ordinary places, extraordinary moments could unfold.